Imagine standing at the helm of an empire, surrounded by war, plague, and betrayal, yet your mind remains unshaken. That was the daily reality for Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled Rome during some of its darkest years. While chaos raged around him, he penned words in his private journal that would echo through centuries. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. How did he maintain such unbreakable focus amid the storm? The answer lies in Stoicism, not as a dusty philosophy, but as a practical toolkit for modern life. We all face our own battles, distractions that pull us from our goals, doubts that whisper we're not enough, or the endless tug of procrastination. But what if you could cultivate the same mental discipline that guided history's greatest thinkers and doers? Stoic habits aren't about suppressing emotion. They're about channeling your energy with laser precision toward what truly matters. These practices transformed slaves like Epictetus into teachers, turned obstacle-riddled paths into opportunities for growth, and today they fuel everyone from elite athletes to visionary entrepreneurs. In this video, we'll explore 25 Stoic habits that act as anchors, keeping you rooted in your mission no matter how rough the seas get. You'll discover how to silence the noise of external validation, reframe setbacks as fuel, and build a mindset that thrives under pressure. This isn't just theory, it's battle-tested wisdom distilled into actions you can start applying today. Whether you're building a business, mastering a craft, or simply seeking clarity in a distracted world, these principles will help you stay the course. The journey begins now. The sun hasn't yet risen, the world is quiet, and in this stillness lies a secret weapon, the Stoic morning reflection. Picture Seneca sitting by candlelight, parchment in hand, deliberately shaping his mindset before the chaos of Rome could demand his attention. He didn't check notifications or rush into reactive mode. Instead, he asked himself two piercing questions. What do I want to achieve today? And what could disrupt my peace? This wasn't just planning, it was mental armor forged before battle. The Stoics called this practice Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of obstacles. By visualizing potential setbacks, a rude colleague, a missed deadline, even personal fatigue, they stripped those challenges of their power to surprise. Epictetus, born a slave, knew this better than anyone. He taught that while we can't control external events, we can always control our preparation. Imagine walking into your day already knowing how you'll respond to distractions or frustration. That's the clarity this habit delivers. Here's how to make it yours. Take 5 minutes each morning before your phone, before the noise, and write 3 lines. First, name your mission for the day, not a to-do list, but your deeper intention. Maybe it's lead with patience or focus on meaningful work, not just busy work. Next, anticipate one obstacle. Will procrastination whisper? Will a meeting test your temper? Finally, draft your response in advance. If X happens, I will remember that my reaction is my choice. This ritual isn't about predicting the future, it's about reclaiming agency. Modern life bombards us with urgency, but the Stoics remind us the first minutes of your day are sacred ground. Plant your flag there. When you define your priorities and rehearse your resilience before the world interrupts, you're not just planning a day, you're sculpting a mindset. And that's how ordinary mornings become the foundation of extraordinary discipline. Epictetus, the former slave-turned-Stoic teacher, left us with perhaps the most liberating mental model in history, the dichotomy of control. Picture him in his simple Roman classroom telling students, "Some things are within our power while others are not." 2,000 years later, that razor-sharp distinction remains the ultimate antidote to modern anxiety. We exhaust ourselves chasing external validation, refreshing social media for likes, or fretting over colleagues' opinions, all while neglecting the one realm where we hold absolute sovereignty, our own choices. The Stoics didn't just preach this idea, they weaponized it. When Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, he didn't waste energy wishing his enemies were different. He focused on his response, writing, "The obstacle is the way." When Epictetus's leg was broken in slavery, he realized his captors could chain his body but never his mind. This is the essence of the dichotomy, not passive acceptance, but fierce concentration of effort where it actually changes outcomes. Try this control-ordered exercise tonight. Grab paper and draw 2 columns. In the first, list stressors draining your mental energy: a critical boss, stalled traffic, a friend's unreliable behavior. Now the crucial step, transfer every item you can't directly control to the second column. That coworker's attitude, column 2, the weather, column 2. Your own preparation, attitude, and effort, those stay in column 1, your empire of control. Consider the tech CEO who avoided burnout using this practice. Each morning, she'd review her control list before walking into investor meetings. When negotiations grew tense, she'd silently ask, "Is this in my control?" If not, she'd release the tension in her shoulders. If yes, she'd channel energy into crafting better arguments. Over time, this mental sorting became automatic, freeing up cognitive bandwidth previously wasted on futile worries. The magic lies in what happens next, redirecting the energy you once spent on the uncontrollable. Instead of agonizing over a delayed flight, read that book you've neglected. Rather than ruminating on someone's rude comment, invest that mental space into refining your skills. This isn't about ignoring reality, it's about deploying your attention like a precision tool. The Stoics knew what modern neuroscience confirms: our brains have limited resources. Every ounce of worry spent on things outside your control is stolen from what could build your resilience, creativity, and progress. Social media hijacks this principle. Scrolling traps us in endless comparison, a realm where others' curated lives seem like benchmarks for our worth. The Stoic remedy: catch yourself mid-scroll and ask, "Is this person's highlight reel within my control?" The answer snaps you back to your lane where real growth happens. This habit isn't a one-time fix, it's a daily realignment, like a sailor constantly adjusting sails to the wind. What makes this practice revolutionary is its simplicity. No apps, no complex systems, just a persistent question: control or no control? Over time, this filter reshapes your entire relationship with stress. Problems don't disappear, but your energy stops leaking. You'll catch yourself laughing when plans crumble, not because you don't care, but because you've trained your focus like a laser on what you can actually influence. That shift from reactive distress to purposeful action is where ordinary people begin doing extraordinary work. Picture this: a tech startup founder stands before her team, announcing they've burned through 80% of their funding with no breakthrough in sight. Instead of panic, she's eerily calm. Why? Because she's already lived this moment 100 times in her mind. The Stoics called this Premeditatio Malorum, the deliberate rehearsal of adversity. While others naively hope for smooth sailing, practitioners of this habit inoculate themselves against shock by mentally walking through every potential disaster long before it arrives. Ancient Stoics like Seneca didn't just wait for misfortune, they invited it in for dinner. What's the worst that could happen? They'd ask, stripping fear of its power by staring it down in advance. Modern psychology confirms this. Navy SEAL use stress inoculation, while elite athletes visualize losing streaks to stay composed under pressure. The principle is identical. By rehearsing challenges, you rewire your brain to see obstacles as familiar terrain rather than existential threats. Here's how to apply it. Grab a notebook and title a page "Obstacle Simulations." Now, for a goal you're pursuing: launching a business, writing a book, improving your health, list 3 worst-case scenarios. Maybe your product bombs at launch, your manuscript gets rejected, or an injury derails your fitness streak. Then, channel your inner Stoic. Write how you'd respond with reason rather than emotion. If sales are weak, I'll analyze feedback and pivot. If my draft is rejected, I'll study the critique and refine. This isn't pessimism, it's strategic antifragility. Consider the founder who simulated her startup's collapse for months. When her lead investor pulled out, her team panicked, but she remained steady. Why? She'd already mentally tested responses, cutting non-essential costs, rallying her team with Stoic quotes about opportunity in crisis, even drafting a contingency pitch for new backers. Where others saw chaos, she saw a script she'd rehearsed. Extend this practice with reverse gratitude. Each night, instead of counting blessings, ask, what did I take for granted today? Your health, a stable income, loving relationships. Now imagine losing them, not to dwell in misery, but to appreciate their fragility and prepare for their possible absence. The Stoics knew this. By touching the void voluntarily, we're never truly blindsided. Marathon runners use a brutal version of this, training in downpours to be ready for race day storms. What makes Premeditatio Malorum revolutionary is its dual effect. Yes, it builds resilience, but it also reveals hidden leverage points. When you mentally walk through failure, you often spot preventative measures, maybe securing backup suppliers or diversifying income streams. The ancient Stoics didn't just accept fate, they used foresight to bend it. Modern research on proactive coping shows this exact tactic reduces anxiety and improves performance in everyone from surgeons to public speakers. Social media amplifies our fear of failure by showcasing only others' victories. The Stoic counters this by flipping the script. If my venture fails publicly, what then? Maybe humility learned there prevents future hubris. Perhaps a forced pivot leads to a better path. This habit isn't about expecting doom, it's about neutering its terror. When you've already survived the worst in your mind, the real thing feels like just another step in your journey. Elite performers share one trait: they don't waste energy on surprise. A concert pianist anticipates the slippery key. A CEO prepares for the supply chain rupture. Like a chess master playing out moves 10 turns ahead, Premeditatio Malorum lets you face life's storms not as a frightened passenger, but as the unshakable captain of your soul. Start small, rehearse one challenge this week. The more you practice adversity, the less it practices on you. There's a reason successful entrepreneurs like Jack Dorsey and athletes like David Goggins swear by ice baths. Not because they enjoy discomfort, but because they've mastered the Stoic art of voluntary hardship. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, routinely slept on the hard ground instead of his lavish bed, writing in his journal, "When you have trouble getting out of bed, remember your purpose, to act as a human being, not a pampered houseplant." This wasn't masochism, it was training. By intentionally embracing minor discomforts, the Stoics immunized themselves against life's inevitable hardships, ensuring they'd never be derailed by inconvenience or fear. Modern science backs this ancient practice. Researchers at the University of Toronto found that people who regularly expose themselves to controlled stressors, like cold exposure or intermittent fasting, develop higher pain tolerance, improved emotional regulation, and increased focus. The mechanism is simple. When you voluntarily step into discomfort, you rewire your brain's threat response. That work deadline or difficult conversation no longer triggers panic because you've conditioned your mind to stay steady under pressure. Start with this 7-day challenge. Day 1, take a cold shower for 30 seconds. Day 2, skip breakfast and observe your hunger without reacting. Day 3, leave your phone at home during a short walk. Each day, incrementally increase the difficulty while journaling your responses. Notice how discomfort shifts from terrifying to manageable and eventually to empowering. Like a muscle, your willpower strengthens through resistance. The magic lies in the why. When billionaire investor Ray Dalio fasts for 12 hours before important meetings, he's not just detoxing, he's proving to himself that his clarity isn't dependent on comfort. That's the Stoic edge. When you voluntarily choose hardship, you dismantle the illusion that external conditions control your focus. Next time you're tempted to hit snooze or grab convenience food, pause. That moment of choice is where discipline is forged. As Seneca wrote, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. The cold shower isn't the goal, it's the gym for your mindset, preparing you to face greater challenges with unwavering resolve. Extend this principle beyond physical challenges. Try a no-complaint day where vocalizing frustrations is off-limits, forcing you to either solve problems or accept them. Or delete social media apps for 48 hours, observing how your mind rebels against the absence of dopamine hits. Each act of voluntary discomfort reveals how much of your distraction is merely comfort addiction in disguise. History's most resilient figures shared this practice. Beethoven immersed his head in ice water before composing to sharpen his focus. Theodore Roosevelt, sickly as a child, lifted weights in a makeshift gym to build the body that would later lead Rough Riders up San Juan Hill. The common thread: they didn't wait for hardship to find them. They sought it out on their terms. What begins as a cold shower transforms into something profound: the realization that comfort is overrated. When you willingly face minor discomforts, major obstacles shrink in comparison. You'll catch yourself grinning during chaotic moments, not because they're enjoyable, but because you recognize them as opportunities to practice what you've trained for. That's the ultimate payoff: not just focus, but freedom. Freedom from fear, from fragility, from the tyranny of expecting life to be easy. The Stoics knew the person who masters discomfort masters themselves. And in a world addicted to ease, that mastery becomes your superpower. As the day winds down and the world grows quiet again, the most powerful Stoic ritual begins, not with action but with ruthless honesty. Seneca called it his nightly audit, while Roman generals knew it as the after-action report. This is where warriors and philosophers alike turn the mirror on themselves, not to judge but to course correct. Imagine sitting by lamplight with your journal, replaying the day's events like footage, searching not for excuses but for truth. Where did my focus drift? When did comfort override conviction? The answers transform ordinary nights into launch pads for tomorrow's breakthroughs. History's greatest strategists understood this habit's power. After every battle, Roman legions would gather not to celebrate but to dissect. What tactical errors nearly cost them victory, which moments revealed undisciplined thinking. Modern military units still use this principle: Navy SEAL conduct, after-action reviews, where egos get checked at the door. The Stoics took it further, applying the same rigor to inner battles. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations wasn't written for publication. It was his private debrief, line after line exposing where he'd acted against his principles. That's the essence of the evening review: not self-flagellation, but strategic refinement. Start with 3 probing questions. First, what distraction hijacked my attention today? Maybe you planned to write for 2 hours but lost 45 minutes scrolling news feeds. The goal isn't guilt, it's pattern recognition. Second, where did discomfort steer me off course? Perhaps you avoided a tough conversation or settled for mediocre work when fatigue hit. Third, the most transformative, what would my ideal self have done differently? This shifts the focus from shame to solution. Write one specific adjustment for tomorrow. When the urge to procrastinate strikes, I'll set a timer for 5 minutes of focused work first. The magic lies in the cumulative effect. After 30 days of these nightly audits, you'll spot recurring traps: the mid-afternoon energy dip where discipline falters, the certain types of interruptions you consistently allow. That's when the Stoic feedback loop clicks into gear. Like a pilot adjusting course degree by degree, these small, consistent corrections compound into remarkable trajectory changes. A modern example: a startup founder who realized through nightly reviews that he was saying yes to every meeting out of FOMO. After 3 weeks of tracking, he blocked deep work mornings, boosting productivity by 60%. Elevate the practice with reverse engineering. Pick a day when everything clicked. You finished critical work early, remained patient under stress, turned down distractions with ease. Dissect that day like a scientist. What conditions made focus effortless? Was it an earlier bedtime, a morning workout, a nutritious breakfast? The Stoics called this capturing your wins, and it's just as vital as analyzing losses. Tech entrepreneurs use digital versions of this ritual, apps that track screen time followed by nightly reflections on whether those hours aligned with priorities. But the medium matters less than the mindset. Whether you scribble in a leathered journal or dictate into your phone, the core remains unchanged, brutal honesty paired with compassionate course correction. As Epictetus reminded his students, no great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. Your evening review is that ripening process daily tending to the garden of your focus. Some nights you'll cringe at your missteps. Others, you'll celebrate small victories, but over time, this habit does something extraordinary. It turns life into your wisest teacher. Every distraction becomes data. Every setback a lesson. And when you lay your head down each night knowing you've mined the day for its hidden gems, sleep comes easier. Because tomorrow isn't another chance to get it right. It's the reward for having learned from today. There's a counterintuitive secret hidden in plain sight on ancient Roman coins, a skull engraved beside the words Memento Mori, Latin for remember you must die. Far from being morbid, this was the Stoics' ultimate focusing tool. Picture Marcus Aurelius keeping a human skull on his desk, not as decoration but as a visceral reminder. Life's brevity makes every hour precious. Fast forward 20 centuries and Silicon Valley CEOs use apps like WeCroak, which sends 5 daily death reminders with the same startling effect. When confronted with mortality's stark reality, trivial distractions lose their grip and what truly matters snaps into sharp relief. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics knew. A Harvard study split students into 2 groups. One wrote about death for 10 minutes, while the other described dental pain. The death reflection group showed 32% less procrastination on subsequent tasks. Why? The researchers called it existential urgency. Facing life's finitude triggers a primal shift from someday to today. Medieval monks kept hourglasses on their desks. Samurai recited death poems before battle. Steve Jobs famously asked himself each morning, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do? Across eras and cultures, the lesson is identical. Mortality isn't a dark cloud, it's the wind that clears away mental fog. Try this modern twist on the Stoic ritual. Set a phone alarm labeled Memento Mori for 3 random times this week. When it chimes, pause and ask, if this were my final year, would I spend this moment as I am? No need for dramatic answers, just notice how the question dissolves procrastination's illusions. That colleague's petty comment, the endless scroll through cat videos. They can't compete with death's whisper. Is this how you'd spend your last 100 hours? The magic lies in specificity. General thoughts of mortality provoke anxiety, but targeted reflection builds focus. Journal for 5 minutes about what you'd regret not doing if you died suddenly. Not grand bucket list items, but unspoken truths left unsaid, talents left unshared, or love left unexpressed. A tech founder who did this exercise realized he'd regret never mentoring young developers. Within a week, he'd launched a coding scholarship. Another discovered her real anguish would be leaving songs unwritten, so she canceled Netflix and finished her album. Death doesn't just clarify priorities, it ignites action. Critics argue this habit breeds morbidity, but the Stoics saw the opposite. Seneca wrote, "Life is long if you know how to use it." By staring at the hourglass, they learned to savor each grain. Modern death positivity, advocates like Caitlin Doughty show how mortality awareness enhances joy. After all, the sweetness of a ripe peach comes from knowing the season won't last. This isn't about fear, it's about liberation. When you stop pretending you have unlimited time, you stop tolerating meaningless busy work, toxic relationships, and self-imposed limitations. For a tangible practice, adopt the last year test. When deciding between options, a new job, a move, even a weekend plan, project yourself to your deathbed and ask, which choice will my future self thank me for? The answers often surprise. That grueling creative project you've been avoiding, your dying self will cherish the pride of completion, the expensive gadget tempting you. Future, you won't remember it at all. The Stoics didn't use skulls to frighten themselves, they used them to excavate their truest desires from beneath life's clutter. What makes Memento Mori revolutionary is its impartiality. Unlike motivational quotes or productivity hacks, death doesn't care about your excuses. It's the ultimate accountability partner. No amount of self-delusion can argue with "you have limited heartbeats left." In a world drowning in distractions, this ancient habit remains the sharpest scalpel for cutting through noise. The next time you're paralyzed by perfectionism or lost in trivialities, hear Epictetus whispering, "You act like you're immortal, that's why you waste days." Now remember, you're not, and watch how swiftly your hands get moving. Imagine being locked in a Nazi concentration camp, stripped of everything, your family, your possessions, even your name tattooed on your arm. Where most saw only despair, Viktor Frankl saw something startling, the ultimate test of his philosophy. In that living hell, he scribbled in stolen notebooks what would become man's search for meaning, writing. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. This wasn't naive optimism, it was Amor Fati in its rawest form. The Stoic-inspired practice of loving one's fate, not in spite of the struggle but because of it. The phrase Amor Fati, Latin for love of fate, was popularized by Nietzsche, who called it his formula for greatness, but its roots dig deep into Stoic soil. Epictetus, born into slavery, taught his students, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens, then you will be happy." At first glance, this sounds like passive surrender. In reality, it's a psychological superpower. When you stop resisting reality and start extracting value from it, obstacles transform into fuel. Modern psychology validates this ancient wisdom. Researchers at the University of California found that people who practiced Amor Fati techniques, reframing setbacks as opportunities, recovered from failures 40% faster than peers who dwelled on disappointment. The mechanism is simple but profound. When you stop labeling events as good or bad, you short-circuit the brain's negativity bias, freeing mental energy for solutions. A startup founder who loses funding doesn't wallow. She asks, "What does this free me to do differently?" An athlete benched by injury doesn't rage. He studies game tapes, refining his mental playbook. Try this happened for me, journaling exercise tonight. Recall a recent setback, a rejected proposal, a missed promotion, a broken relationship. Now list 3 ways this event might serve your growth. Maybe that job rejection pushed you to start the business you'd always feared. Perhaps the heartbreak taught you boundaries that'll protect future love. Frankl's camp ordeal birthed logotherapy, a school of psychology that saved millions from despair. The key isn't pretending pain doesn't exist, it's mining it for its hidden gifts. What makes Amor Fati revolutionary is its refusal to see life's events as random. The Stoics viewed the universe as a weaving where even the darkest threads contribute to the pattern. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle is the way," he wasn't offering a motivational platitude. He was revealing a cosmic law. Adversity isn't an interruption of your path, it's the terrain itself. This mindset shift turns victims into alchemists, Consider the tech CEO who, after his company's scandal, publicly owned the failure, then pivoted to build ethical AI tools. His TED talk on failing upward now inspires millions. Social media conditions us to curate perfect narratives, airbrushing out struggles. Amor Fati rebels against this, finding beauty in the cracks. Beethoven's deafness birthed his transcendent late compositions. Van Gogh's mental anguish fueled his swirling skies. When you start viewing your own life through this lens, something extraordinary happens. You stop fearing chaos and start trusting the process. Every detour becomes scenic, every setback a setup. The practice doesn't demand grand gestures. Start small. Next time traffic steals an hour, use it to listen to that audiobook you've postponed. When rain cancels your hike, savor the unexpected chance to finish that neglected project. Like a blacksmith tempering steel, each moment of embraced friction strengthens your resilience. Nietzsche put it bluntly, "That which does not kill me makes me stronger," but the Stoics went further. They'd say it doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you you. Your scars aren't flaws in the sculpture, they're the chisel marks that reveal its authenticity. Frankel's campmates who found meaning survived at higher rates. Today's entrepreneurs who love their stumbles outlast competitors. The common thread, they stopped asking, "Why me?" and started asking, "What now?" That shift from resistance to reverence is where ordinary endurance becomes extraordinary triumph. Your fate isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. The question is, will you love it enough to let it shape you? The trading floor erupts in chaos, alarms blaring, screens flashing red, colleagues shouting sell orders. In this maelstrom, one hedge fund manager doesn't react. Instead, he closes his eyes for 3 deliberate breaths. By the time he opens them, the market's begun correcting. His secret, the Stoic pause, that sacred gap between stimulus and response where mastery lives. 2,000 years ago, gladiators trained to count heartbeats before striking, knowing the difference between victory and death wasn't strength, but the discipline of that split-second delay. Today, neuroscience confirms what the ancients knew. The amygdala's panic signals take exactly 3 seconds to reach the prefrontal cortex. Hijack that window and you hijack your destiny. This isn't just about resisting knee-jerk reactions, it's about reclaiming sovereignty over your attention. Picture a software developer pinged by a frantic Slack message mid-code. Without the pause, she'd abandon deep work to extinguish someone else's emergency. With it, she finishes her thought, then responds with clarity. The Stoics called this vigilant self-awareness. Epictetus described it as the guardian at the gates of the mind, deciding what deserves entry. Modern life assaults us with endless stimuli, emails, notifications, breaking news, all designed to trigger instant reactions. The pause is your psychological immune system. Ancient gladiators used a breathwork technique called intervallum, inhaling through the nose for 3 counts, holding for 2, exhaling through pursed lips for 4. This wasn't just oxygen management, it was neural resetting. The trader from our opening example practices a modern version. When markets plummet, his hands hover over the keyboard while he whispers, "Virtue over velocity." That mantra bridges the biological and the philosophical, buying time for wisdom to override instinct. Try the rule of 3 today. When any stressor hits, a critical email, a toddler's tantrum, a missed deadline freeze. 1. Name the emotion. This is frustration. 2. Sense your body. Jaw is clenched. 3. Ask, what would my best self do? That sequence leverages what psychologists call metacognition, thinking about thinking, to disrupt autopilot. A study of ER doctors found those trained in this technique made 42% fewer diagnostic errors under pressure. The pause also exposes hidden patterns. After a month of journaling his reactions, a startup CEO noticed 80% of his impulsive decisions occurred before 11 a.m. Turns out, skipping breakfast was priming him for rash choices. Now he schedules no meetings before his morning ritual of walnuts, hydration, and 5 minutes of box breathing, an ancient Roman technique where you inhale, hold, exhale, and pause for equal counts, visualizing each breath tracing the sides of a square. Digital distractions weaponize our pause deficiency. Social media platforms exploit what psychologist B.F. Skinner called variable ratio reinforcement, the same mechanic that hooks gamblers. Every scroll is a slot pull, training your brain to crave the dopamine hit of what's next. The Stoic antidote: install literal friction. One writer keeps his phone in a timed kitchen safe during work hours. Another uses a browser extension that forces a 10-second countdown before any new tab opens. These barriers create artificial pauses, allowing reason to intercept impulse. What makes this habit transformative is its scalability. Use the micropause, a single breath before responding to a snarky comment. Deploy the macropause, a 24-hour waiting period before major purchases or career decisions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Our life is what our thoughts make it." Control the gap between event and interpretation, and you control the quality of your existence. The next time chaos knocks, don't fling open the door. Let it wait 3 seconds. In that silence, you'll find the still point around which an unshakable life turns. Marcus Aurelius never wrote a single word of meditations for public consumption. Those private pages, originally titled "To Myself," were his nightly battlefield where he dissected his own shortcomings and reinforced his commitment to leadership. While modern journaling often devolves into bland gratitude lists or emotional venting, Stoic journaling had teeth. Each entry was a targeted strike against mediocrity, a recalibration toward virtue. Picture the emperor hunched over wax tablets by flickering lamplight, not cataloging pleasures but interrogating himself. Have I acted justly today? Did comfort override duty? Where did my focus falter? This wasn't self-help, it was self-auditing at the highest level. The difference between generic journaling and mission-focused writing lies in its surgical precision. Gratitude journals scatter attention broadly. I'm thankful for sunshine, coffee, my dog. While Stoic logs zero in on alignment. Did today's actions advance my core purpose? Consider the entrepreneur who trades fluffy morning pages for a razor-sharp template. Instead of "today went well," she writes, "spent 3 hours on low-value emails instead of product development." Tomorrow, block first 2 hours for deep work before checking inbox. See the shift: one drifts, the other directs. Create your own mission alignment log with 3 daily prompts. First, what one action today moved me closest to my long-term vision? Not tasks checked off, but meaningful progress. Perhaps refusing a distracting meeting to protect creative time. Second, where did I compromise my standards? Be brutally specific. Did you tolerate gossip, skip your workout for trivial reasons? Third, the most potent, what will I repair tomorrow? Not vague promises, but concrete corrections. If tempted to multitask during client calls, I'll keep a notepad to jot distractions for later. Modern research from Dominican University reveals why this works. People who write down goals with actionable steps are 42% more likely to achieve them. But the Stoics added a game-changing layer, coupling goals with accountability to one's highest self. A Silicon Valley CTO credits this practice with his turnaround from burned-out manager to focused leader. His journal evolved from "had tough day" to "lost temper in sprint review next time, pause 10 seconds before responding, update, practiced pause twice today successfully." Progress, not perfection. Adapt the ancient format for digital age challenges. Track screen time not just in hours but in intention. 2 hours on Instagram. Was this aligned with my mission to write my book? Use voice memos for on-the-go auditing. One surgeon records post-op reflections. Did I explain the procedure with compassion? Could I have been more present? The medium matters less than the merciless focus on growth. What makes this habit revolutionary is its compounding effect. After 30 days, patterns emerge. Maybe your focus tanks after sugar-heavy lunches or creative energy peaks before noon. Like Marcus reviewing his week's entries, you'll spot leverage points invisible in daily chaos. The journal becomes a mirror reflecting not who you wish you were, but who you actually are, and that's where real change begins. No fluff, no filters, just the unvarnished truth and the relentless will to meet it. Seneca once complained that life in imperial Rome felt like being tossed on a stormy sea, not because of genuine demands, but because people crammed their days with trivial pursuits. Fast forward 2,000 years, and our smartphones have become pocket-sized versions of that same storm, constantly pitching us between notifications, updates, and infinite scroll. The Stoic philosopher would shudder at how willingly we fracture our attention, trading the deep satisfaction of meaningful work for the cheap dopamine of digital crumbs. But here's the twist: the same principles that helped Romans navigate crowded marketplaces can help us reclaim focus in the age of algorithmic overload. Digital minimalism isn't about abandoning technology, it's about deploying it with Stoic intentionality. Take attention capital theory, a concept from computer scientist Cal Newport. Just as ancient ship captains conserved physical resources for critical voyages, our cognitive energy is finite. Every time we switch tasks, checking email mid-project or reacting to a social media ping, we burn fuel. Newport's research shows it takes 23 minutes on average to refocus after an interruption. That's why the modern Stoic treats their smartphone like a Roman general treated his armor, a tool for specific missions, not a constant second skin. Start with the single tasking app rule. Before downloading any new app, ask Seneca's triage question: does this serve my fundamental mission or merely entertain me? If it passes, assign it one dedicated purpose. Your Notes app is for capturing ideas, period. No checking news tabs that sneak in. Your fitness tracker logs workouts, not social comparisons. Even better, group apps into villages on your home screen. Productivity tools in one corner, communication in another, with deserts of empty space between. This physical separation creates friction against mindless tapping, reactivating the prefrontal cortex's veto power. Next, schedule your doom-scrolling hours. Yes, schedule them. The Stoics practiced Premeditatio Malorum by deliberately exposing themselves to discomfort. Similarly, allot 10 minutes nightly to scan headlines or social feeds. This contains the chaos instead of letting it invade your day. One executive found this so effective he named his calendar block Seneca's Sandbox, a playful nod to the philosopher's warning that uncontrolled curiosity is a form of gluttony. By containing digital consumption to set times, you train your brain to crave depth rather than fragments. The most radical practice: cultivate analog anchors. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations with a stylus on wax tablets, the tactile feedback grounding his thoughts. Modern equivalents exist: a physical book by your bed instead of a sleep-wrecking phone, a pocket notebook for ideas rather than defaulting to apps. One writer replaced his morning Twitter ritual with engraving a single Stoic quote onto a copper slate. The deliberate slowness of the engraving tool, he says, mirrors the patience he wants to embody. These tangible rituals act as bulwarks against the digital tide. What makes this approach uniquely Stoic is its rejection of binary thinking. The goal isn't to demonize technology, but to interrogate its role like a philosopher examining an argument. When Newport advocates for digital decluttering, he echoes Epictetus's distinction between what's up to us, our choices, and what isn't, the tech industry's persuasive designs. By curating our digital environments with the same rigor the Stoics applied to their mental ones, we transform our devices from attention thieves into vessels for virtue. The scroll never ends, but our participation in it can, when we remember that every swipe is a vote for who we become. Picture floating 250 miles above Earth, watching storms swirl over continents without borders, cities reduced to glowing specks. This is the overview effect astronauts describe, a shift in consciousness so profound it rewires their priorities forever. When Apollo 14's Edgar Mitchell saw our planet hanging fragile in the black void, he wept, overwhelmed by the realization that all human conflict occurs on a tiny stage in a vast cosmic arena. The Stoics anticipated this perspective by 2 millennia with their view from above meditation, a mental exercise where you pull back from life's minutiae until quarrels, setbacks, and even personal ambitions appear as small as ants on a sidewalk. This isn't escapism, it's strategic zooming out. Marcus Aurelius practiced it daily, writing, "Take a bird's-eye view to see how trivial human affairs are." By mentally ascending, he dissolved petty grievances that could have derailed an emperor's judgment. Modern psychology confirms the power of this shift. Studies show that visualizing problems from a distant future or cosmic perspective reduces emotional intensity by 70%. That coworker who slighted you, seen from 10,000 feet, their comment holds the weight of a dust mote. Your presentation anxiety, the universe won't note its outcome in a billion years. Try this 5-minute audio meditation. Close your eyes and imagine rising slowly from your current location through the ceiling, above your neighborhood, watching cars become matchboxes. Keep ascending until continents take shape, oceans curve at the edges, and finally, Earth floats alone in star-drenched darkness. Now observe your current challenge from here. That unpaid bill, family tension, or career doubt, how significant does it feel now? Hold this view for 3 breaths, then gradually return, bringing that expansive awareness back into your body, letting it soften your shoulders and unclench your jaw. The magic lies in what happens next. Astronauts returning from space often abandon trivial pursuits, focusing on environmental activism or family bonds. Similarly, after the view from above, mundane irritations lose their grip. A tech executive who practices this before board meetings told me, "When I visualize the room from orbit, posturing executives look like kids playing dress-up." It's impossible to take petty power games seriously. Another uses it to combat perfectionism. Her failed product launch stung until she pictured it from the moon's surface. One speck in human history, she realized, freeing her to innovate without fear. This habit isn't about diminishing your lived experience but contextualizing it. Pain remains real, but its dominion over you shrinks. The Stoics knew what Hubble's photos prove. Against the cosmos canvas, most of what we call urgent is theater. Yet here's the paradox. This perspective doesn't breed apathy but clarifies true priorities. When you see life from the stars, you stop sweating insults and start cherishing acts of kindness, knowing these brief flashes of warmth are what endure in the cold expanse. Your mission isn't trivialized, it's distilled to its essence, unobscured by the fog of transient concerns. For a modern twist, pair this practice with scientific awe. Watch footage from the James Webb Space Telescope before meditating. Those swirling galaxies older than time make earthly grudges seem laughably fleeting. Or borrow astronaut Chris Hadfield's trick. When overwhelmed, he'd recall that Earth orbits the Sun at 67,000 miles per hour while spinning 1,000 miles per hour. If we can handle that motion without panicking, he'd joke, "Surely I can handle this meeting." Like a mountain seen from a plane window, problems that loom large on the ground reveal their true scale from altitude. The view from above doesn't erase challenges, it gives you the eyes to see which are worth your finite days. And in that clarity, you'll find something unexpected, not insignificance but freedom. The freedom to focus on what matters, unshackled from what never did. Society often measures success by the wrong yardsticks: bank balances, follower counts, awards gathering dust on shelves. The Stoics proposed a radical alternative. What if we measured not by what we achieve, but by who we become in the process? Consider 2 entrepreneurs. One fixates on hitting $1 million revenue target, sacrificing sleep, integrity, and relationships along the way. The other aims to cultivate patience in negotiations, fairness in team management, and resilience amid setbacks. Both might reach the same financial milestone, but the latter emerges not just wealthier but wiser. This is the essence of character-centered goals, where the finish line isn't a number but the quality of your soul. History offers a striking case study in Andrew Carnegie. After achieving unimaginable wealth equivalent to over $300 billion today, he confessed to crushing emptiness. His pivot, abandoning profit targets for virtue targets. The man who dies rich dies disgraced, he declared, channeling Stoic principles. Instead of increase steel output, his goal became serve courageously, funding libraries, education, and scientific research with the same rigor he'd applied to business. The result, over 2,500 public libraries built, unlocking knowledge for millions. Carnegie's revised mission wasn't softer, it demanded more discipline because character is harder to quantify than cash flow. Modern goal-setting frameworks like OKRs, objectives, and key results often reinforce external metrics, grow user base by 20%, the Stoic upgrade. Virtue-based OKRs, try this template, objective virtue focus, cultivate courage in leadership, key results, behavioral benchmarks. 1. Have one uncomfortable conversation per week, e.g., giving constructive feedback. 2. Delegate a high-stakes task to empower my team. 3. Say no to an unethical opportunity, regardless of financial loss. Notice the shift. The metric isn't the outcome, but the practice. A tech founder using this approach told me, "When I stopped obsessing over valuation and started tracking how often I chose honesty over convenience, my decisions aligned in ways that ironically boosted valuation anyway." The magic lies in inversion. While conventional wisdom says success builds character, Stoics argue the opposite: character is success. When composer John Cage set out to embrace uncertainty authentically rather than write a hit symphony, he revolutionized modern music. When educator Marva Collins prioritized unconditional patience with struggling students over raising test scores, her Chicago students outperformed elite academies. External rewards may follow, but their side effects, not the compass. For a personal audit, ask 2 questions about your current goals. If I achieve this but become someone I dislike, was it worth it? And if I fail but grow in integrity, is that true failure? The answers reveal whether you're climbing a ladder or building one that leans against the right wall. In a world shouting more, faster, bigger, character-centered goals whisper something subversive. The richest reward isn't what you get, but who you'll be when you get there. And that's a target no market crash can erase. Imagine walking into a room where Marcus Aurelius sits at a mahogany desk, Seneca leans against the bookshelves, and Epictetus quietly sharpens a quill, all watching your next move. This isn't fantasy, it's the Stoic mentor technique, a mental hack ancient philosophers used to bypass willpower and tap into something deeper, the weight of legacy. The moment you picture Cotto the Younger frowning at your procrastination or Musonius Rufus nodding approval at your disciplined work session, abstract virtues like discipline and integrity transform into living, breathing judges of your choices. Modern psychology calls this surrogate accountability, and it's startlingly effective. A Harvard study found that people who visualized a respected observer when making decisions exhibited 37% more self-control than those relying on sheer willpower. The Stoics weaponized this instinctively. When facing temptation, they'd ask, "If my teacher saw me now, would he approve?" Not as guilt trip, but as a compass recalibration. Your imaginary counsel isn't there to shame you, they're there to remind you who you're capable of becoming. Try this Stoic shadow cabinet exercise tonight. First, assemble your personal dream team of historical mentors, perhaps Marcus for leadership, Epictetus for resilience, Portia Cotto's fiercely stoic daughter for courage. Then role-play 3 recent decisions through their eyes. That late-night impulse buy, Seneca might raise an eyebrow and murmur, "Does this serve your purpose or your pleasure?" The skipped workout, Zeno could dryly note, "You're not just neglecting your body, you're neglecting your self-respect." The brilliant part, unlike real-life mentors, these figures never tire of your questions. For a modern twist, assign Stoic mentors to specific domains. A programmer I know keeps a small bust of Epictetus by his monitor. When debugging feels endless, he hears the former slave's voice. Is the code hard, or have you just decided it is? Another executive visualizes Marcus Aurelius beside her during layoffs, whispering, "Justice and mercy aren't opposites, they're one muscle." The practice turns ethical dilemmas from paralyzing to clarifying. The Stoic Council variant takes this further. Before major decisions, mentally convene your philosophers in an imaginary war room. Present your dilemma as they debate it, Epictetus cutting to core truths, Seneca passing nuances, Cotto insisting on principle over convenience. Their imagined debate often surfaces insights lone reflection misses. One entrepreneur avoided a lucrative but ethically gray deal after his mental Marcus asked, "Will this profit matter on your deathbed?" But your compromised honor might. Critics argue this resembles juvenile imaginary friends, but neuroscience reveals why it works. The brain's medial prefrontal cortex processes advice from mentors, real or imagined, with equal weight. When you channel historical figures who embodied your aspirations, you're not playing pretend, you're activating neural pathways for wisdom. Like an actor becoming Hamlet by studying the prince's soliloquies, you become more stoic by rehearsing their responses. Social media diluted accountability. We curate personas while acting anonymously. The Stoic mentor technique rebuilds that lost integrity, scrolling Instagram at work. Suddenly Aurelius is reading over your shoulder, gossiping about a colleague. Portia's disappointed sigh cuts through the chatter. These mental flashes create friction where distraction once flowed smoothly. What begins as theatrical self-talk evolves into authentic transformation. Over time, the external judges internalize. Eventually, you won't need to imagine Marcus's reaction. Your own standards will have risen to meet his. That's the ultimate goal, not living under history's gaze, but developing a gaze worthy of history. So tonight, when you reach for your phone instead of your journal, pause. The Stoics are watching. What do you want them to see? Seneca would vanish for weeks at a time, not to escape the world, but to truly engage with it. His villa in Nomentum wasn't a retreat from life. It was a laboratory where he distilled wisdom through what he called conversations with great minds. Picture this, the philosopher surrounded by scrolls of Plato, Aristotle, and Zeno, not passively reading, but arguing, refining, even shouting rebuttals into the quiet. This wasn't lonely isolation, it was strategic solitude, a deliberate exchange where the dead became his most vital teachers. In our hyper-connected age, we've forgotten this art, confusing solitude with loneliness and mistaking crowded schedules for meaningful engagement. But the Stoics knew better. To think deeply, you must first create space to breathe. Modern neuroscience reveals why Seneca's practice worked. MRI scans show that during focused reading, our brains don't just process information, they simulate experiences as if we're living them. When you wrestle with Epictetus' words on adversity, neurons fire as though facing actual hardship, building resilience before crises strike. The catch. This requires uninterrupted immersion. A University of London study found that it takes 17 minutes to reach cognitive immersion in complex material, a state shattered by a single notification. Seneca safeguarded this depth by structuring his retreats like monastic study rhythms. Pre-dawn hours for original writing, mid-morning for analytical reading, afternoons for walks synthesizing ideas. No meetings, no small talk, just deliberate oscillation between intense focus and restorative reflection. Try this deep work sprint adapted for modern constraints. Reserve 3 hours on your calendar, preferably when your energy peaks. Silence devices and place them out of sight. Ancient Romans didn't have focus apps because they didn't need them. For the first hour, engage in dialectical reading. Annotate a Stoic text while imagining debating its author. Mark passages you disagree with. Seneca believed friction sparks insight. Hour 2 shifts to application. Journal how today's challenges mirror these ancient lessons. A startup CEO using this method realized his fear of delegation echoed Marcus Aurelius' notes on control. The final hour, walk without headphones, letting ideas collide freely. These rhythms aren't about rigid discipline, but recognizing that creativity ebbs and flows like tides. The loneliness myth persists because we equate solitude with social starvation. But strategic solitude isn't the absence of people, it's the presence of curated minds. Consider how composer John Cage scheduled empty days to hear music in silence, or how Nikola Tesla solved engineering problems during 9-mile walks. Their isolation wasn't hollow, it vibrated with the ghosts of mentors and the hum of unborn ideas. A 21st century twist: create a digital symposium. One writer I know loads his e-reader with PDFs from Marcus Aurelius to Marie Curie, then spends Sunday mornings in a cafe corner, sipping tea while centuries of brilliance converse across his screen. The key is intentionality. These aren't scrolls but invitations to spar with history's sharpest thinkers. Monastic study practices offer surprising insights for our distracted era. Medieval scribes worked in scriptoriums designed for sacred focus, single windows admitting angled light to minimize glare, desks tilted at precise angles to reduce fatigue. Modern equivalents exist. A programmer transformed her apartment balcony into a Seneca nook with a folding desk facing trees, using sunlight as her natural Pomodoro timer. When shadows hit a certain mark, sessions end. Another executive repurposes train commutes as portable retreats, earmarking specific stations for specific tasks: reading before Grand Central, reflection after Harlem. The environment isn't incidental, it's the scaffolding for mental freedom. What makes strategic solitude revolutionary is its counterintuitive truth. By temporarily withdrawing, we deepen our capacity to contribute. Like a musician tuning an instrument backstage, these quiet hours aren't retreat from performance but preparation for it. The Stoics didn't hide from society, they re-entered it armed with clarity. When you emerge from your next reading retreat, you'll carry not just new knowledge but something rarer: the quiet certainty of someone who stood shoulder to shoulder with giants and returned ready to face the world anew. Picture holding your most cherished possession, a family heirloom, a hard-earned diploma, your child's tiny hand, and then visualize it crumbling to dust between your fingers. That visceral sting, the Stoics called it negative visualization, not to torment themselves but to shock their gratitude awake. While Premeditatio Malorum prepares us for potential storms, this practice makes us savor the sunlight we too often take for granted. Researchers at the University of Miami found that people who spent 5 minutes daily imagining losing loved ones experienced a 23% spike in relationship satisfaction, not from macabre fixation, but from piercing through familiarity's numbing veil. The mechanism is counterintuitive yet profound. By mentally rehearsing loss, we short-circuit what psychologists term hedonic adaptation, that cruel trick of the brain where new cars lose their shine and promotions stop feeling thrilling. Ancient merchants crossing the Sahara would pause to envision their caravans swallowed by dunes, making each sip of water taste sweeter. Today, a Silicon Valley engineer applies this by staring at his sleeping son while whispering, "This could be gone." Not to dwell in dread, but to dissolve the illusion that his family's presence is guaranteed. The result: He's present during weekend soccer games instead of scrolling work emails, his focus sharpened by the razor's edge of impermanence. Try this 3-minute morning ritual. Before checking your phone, close your eyes and pick one blessing: your health, a friendship, the roof overhead. Now visualize its absence in brutal detail. If it's your eyesight, picture fumbling for a Braille menu at a cafe. If it's your job, feel the hollow pit of rejected applications. Then snap back to reality. That sudden rush of relief isn't just emotion, it's your amygdala recalibrating what normal feels like. A study in the Journal of Positive Psychology showed participants who practiced this for a week reported 40% less envy toward others' achievements, freeing mental bandwidth previously wasted on comparison. Negative visualization also defangs distractions. When you catch yourself coveting a colleague's promotion, mentally fast forward to their hidden costs, the 60-hour workweeks, the strained marriage. This isn't schadenfreude, it's rebalancing the scales of attention. An artist battling Instagram envy imagines galleries shuttering her exhibitions after a scandal. The fantasy stings, but it also clarifies. She'd rather create meaningful work than chase viral validation. By exposing the unglamorous underbellies of what we desire, we regain agency over our focus. For a guided experience, try Epictetus' last time meditation. As you go about your day, label routine moments. This could be the last time I tie my daughter's shoes. The final sunset I'll see from this porch. The Stoic isn't inviting despair, they're engineering presence. Modern hospice nurses observe this daily. Patients don't reminisce about retweets or stocked closets, but about lazy Sundays and unplugged conversations. Negative visualization brings that end-of-life clarity into the now, where it can redirect your days before they slip away. The practice's power peaks when paired with action. After imagining losing her mobility, a writer began daily stretches not out of fear, but as a celebration of what still worked. A CEO who visualized bankruptcy started tipping generously, realizing his tight budget was someone else's dream. This is negative visualization's secret gift. It doesn't just make us grateful for what we have, it compels us to honor it while we can, the things we're rehearsing losing. They're the very things we should be using, cherishing, or repairing today. And that realization, more than any productivity hack, is what keeps your focus locked on what truly matters. The wooden ship creaks under the pressure of encroaching ice as 28 men stare into the frozen abyss of the Antarctic winter. Their vessel, the Endurance, isn't just stuck, it's being slowly crushed. Yet in this moment of apparent defeat, Ernest Shackleton does something extraordinary. He doesn't panic or despair. Instead, he gathers his crew and announces a radical reframe. Now that we've lost the ship, our journey truly begins. What seemed like the end became the origin story of one of history's greatest survival tales. This is the obstacle is the way in its purest form, not just enduring hardship, but alchemizing it into forward motion. Ryan Holiday's modern interpretation of this Stoic principle strips away ancient jargon to reveal a battle-tested playbook. The core insight: barriers aren't roadblocks, they're the raw materials of progress. When the iPhone development team hit an impossible deadline, Steve Jobs didn't extend the timeline. He demanded engineers remove the keyboard entirely, forcing the touchscreen revolution. Like Shackleton's ice-locked ship, what appeared to be a breaking point became a pivot point. The Stoics called this antifragility, the quality of systems that don't merely withstand chaos but are refined by it. Shackleton's ordeal is the ultimate masterclass. Stranded for 634 days with no rescue coming, he enacted 3 Stoic protocols. First, perception control. He banned the word "if" from his crew's vocabulary. "When we return" became the mantra. Next, action framing. He turned the sinking ship into a makeshift depot, salvaging supplies even as freezing water rose. Finally, will reinforcement. He led morale-boosting activities like dog sled races on ice floes, proving morale is a renewable resource. Modern neuroscience validates his approach. Studies on special forces units show that reframing stress as enhancing rather than debilitating improves performance by 19%. This brings us to problem inversion, a brainstorming technique that flips obstacles into launch pads. Traditional problem solving asks, how do we overcome this? Inversion demands, how could this obstacle help us? When Patagonia's Yvon Chouinard discovered his pitons were damaging rock faces instead of tweaking the design, he asked, what if we abandon metal spikes altogether? The result, revolutionary reusable climbing gear that defined an industry. The method works equally well for daily struggles. Stuck in traffic, that's an audiobook chapter unlocked. Project rejected, now you've got proof you're pushing boundaries worth resisting. Try this inversion drill with any current challenge. Grab paper and divide it into 2 columns. Left side, list the obstacle's negative aspects, e.g., client demands last-minute changes. Right side, force 5 positive reversals. This tests our adaptability, reveals where our systems are rigid, builds trust through crisis management. A startup CEO used this when her supply chain collapsed. Realizing the crisis forced her team to innovate local sourcing, cutting costs by 30% long-term. Like Shackleton repurposing ship timbers for shelters, inversion turns debris into tools. What makes this habit revolutionary is its democratization of grit. You don't need Shackleton's Antarctic ordeal to practice it. A student treating a low grade not as failure but as a diagnostic tool is using the same muscle. A nurse viewing staffing shortages as a chance to hone triage skills is running the same playbook. The ice is always melting or thickening. What changes is whether we see it as prison walls or the path itself. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action," he wasn't offering consolation. He was handing you a chisel to turn every barrier into your next stepping stone. Seneca's piercing words, "Life is long if you know how to use it," cut through 20 centuries of busyness to reveal a truth modern productivity hacks miss. Time isn't scarce, but our attention is. Picture the Stoics' daily rhythm in imperial Rome. Mornings dedicated to philosophy, afternoons to public service, evenings to correspondence, not dictated by others' demands but by deliberate design. This wasn't mere scheduling, it was temporal architecture where every hour carried purpose. Fast forward to today, where Parkinson's law, the observation that work expands to fill available time, turns our days into bloated balloons of distraction. The Stoic antidote, reverse engineering your calendar like a Roman general plotting a campaign, assigning finite assigned hours instead of endless task lists. The Navy SEALs' weekly planning template embodies this principle with battlefield precision. Their doctrine splits time into 3 strategic zones: core missions, non-negotiable priorities, force multipliers, high-leverage activities like training, and white space, intentional recovery. A SEAL might block 4 morning hours for hostage rescue drills core, 90 post-lunch minutes for language study multiplier, and sunset hours strictly for family white space. Notice the absence of vague work blocks. Each segment is mission tagged, mirroring Seneca's practice of labeling scrolls by purpose. One SEAL officer recounted how this method helped him complete a master's degree during active deployment. When insurgents disrupt your schedule, you learn to treat time like rations, he said. Every hour had a job before the day even started. Implementing Stoic time blocking starts with a ruthless audit. Grab last week's calendar and highlight moments of true alignment with your values in green, distractions in red. Most discover their grids bleeding crimson, meetings that could have been emails, scrolling masquerading as research. Now rebuild using the 4-dimensional grid, a modern adaptation of Marcus Aurelius' journaling system. 1. Depth hours morning, guard these like a sacred temple. 3 hours for your most cognitively demanding work, writing, coding, strategic planning. No emails, no quick checks. Like Seneca's pre-dawn philosophical readings, this is when you build your legacy. 2. Duty hours midday, administrative tasks, meetings, correspondence, the modern equivalent of Seneca's public service. Cluster these to prevent context-switching drains. 3. Dynamo hours, late afternoon, physical or creative regeneration. The Stoics' afternoon walks become weightlifting sessions or design sprints. 4. Dark hours, evening, digital sunset. Seneca's lamp-lit correspondence time transforms into device-free reading or family connection. The magic lies in constraints. A startup CEO using this system discovered that limiting investor meetings to 90-minute Tuesday/Thursday slots cut negotiation time by half. When they knew my calendar was ironclad, small talk evaporated, she said. Similarly, a writer who blocked 8 to 11 a.m. for drafting with internet routers programmed to disconnect at 7:55 quintupled his output. Like Roman water clocks measuring oratory time, these boundaries prevent Parkinson's law from hijacking your potential. For recurring distractions, employ Stoic firewalls. Ancient philosophers stationed slaves at study chamber doors to intercept interruptions. Modern equivalents include browser extensions that convert urgent Slack messages into delayed digest emails, physical tokens like a red cup on your desk signaling "Do not disturb" periods to colleagues, pre-scheduled auto-replies stating "I honor your time by preparing thoroughly. Expect my response by specific hour," the ultimate test. Apply Seneca's Memento Mori calendar review. Each Sunday, overlay your upcoming week's blocks with a simple question. If this were my final week, would I spend time this way? Not to incite panic, but to expose misalignments. When a venture capitalist began this practice, he realized 30% of his calendar served others' priorities, not his fund's mission. The correction: delegating all introductory meetings to associates, freeing 10 hours weekly for portfolio deep dives. Time blocking isn't about rigidity, it's about claiming sovereignty over your most finite resource. The Stoics didn't see hours as empty vessels to fill, but as precious metals to mint into something enduring. When you assign each segment purpose before demands can hijack it, you don't just manage time. You defy it. Warren Buffett once handed his pilot a brutal homework assignment: write down his top 25 career goals, then circle just 5, the remaining 20. Those became his avoid at all costs list. This ruthless prioritization mirrors the Stoic doctrine of adiaphora, the ancient Greek term for indifference, meaning everything that doesn't truly advance virtue or purpose. Not all distractions are obvious, some masquerade as opportunities. The Stoics didn't dismiss worldly things as worthless, but as weighted, some heavy enough to sink your focus if you let them aboard. Consider the modern opportunity paradox. A tech founder juggling 10 projects feels productive until realizing none have depth. Enter adiaphora as a filter. Does this meeting, feature request, or networking event serve your core mission, or is it merely not harmful? There's a critical difference. Marcus Aurelius tracked this distinction in his journal, questioning whether tasks were essential or just familiar. Today, neuroscience confirms his instinct. The basal ganglia craves routine, often pushing us toward trivial, busy work that feels productive but lacks strategic impact. Buffett's two-list strategy operationalizes adiaphora. After listing your top 5 priorities, the second list transforms into an anti-compass, a map of attractive detours to avoid. A venture capitalist applied this by taping her avoid list above her monitor, saying yes to speaking engagements outside my niche, checking metrics more than twice daily, optimizing systems that aren't bottlenecks. Each item passed the Stoic test. Could I excel at this yet still fail at what matters most? For a tactical edge, build a not-to-do list generator. Start with 3 prompts. 1. The sunset test. If this disappeared tomorrow, would my mission suffer? Example: customizing PowerPoint templates. 2. The replacement question, could someone else do this at 80% of my effectiveness? Delegatable tasks like expense reports 3. The regret audit. If I said no to this for a year, what would I miss? Most urgent requests fail here. One CEO runs quarterly, in different sprints, where employees pitch tasks to eliminate. Recent cuts included redundant status updates and vanity metrics tracking, freeing 18% of man-hours for R&D. The Stoics would nod in approval. They viewed time as the one non-renewable resource, making trivial pursuits not just inefficient but unethical. Digital tools amplify distractions' allure. The average knowledge worker switches tasks every 3 minutes, a cognitive tax Dichotomy avoids. Try attention accounting. For 1 week, log all activities in 2 columns: core, directly mission-aligned, and current, present but unimportant. Most discover their current column bleeds into evenings and weekends, hijacking hours that could deepen mastery. The magic of this habit lies in its inversion of conventional wisdom. Productivity culture screams, do more. Dichotomy whispers, what can you undo? Like a sculptor chipping away marble to reveal the statue within, eliminating the indifferent reveals the contours of your true priorities. When you stop tolerating trivia, you don't just gain time, you reclaim the clarity to spend it like the Stoics did, with ruthless intentionality. Epictetus didn't see the bustling streets of Rome as a nuisance, he saw them as his personal training arena. Picture the Stoic philosopher weaving through crowded markets, not with frustration, but with the focused determination of an athlete running drills. His famous metaphor cuts to the core of this habit. Life is a wrestling school. When you encounter someone who's rude or obstructive, don't think, how inconvenient. Think, here's my next sparring partner. That shift, from seeing daily irritations as distractions to treating them as precision tools for mental conditioning, is what separates the reactive from the unshakable. Modern neuroscience validates this ancient reframe. When researchers at UCLA monitored brain activity during simulated frustrating scenarios, participants who viewed setbacks as skill-building exercises showed 40% lower cortisol spikes and faster cognitive recovery than those who resisted discomfort. The mechanism is simple yet profound. By labeling traffic jams or difficult colleagues as focus reps, you activate the prefrontal cortex's problem-solving circuits instead of the amygdala's panic buttons. A Wall Street trader I interviewed applies this by keeping a tally on his monitor for every interruption he navigates with stoic calm. My record is 27 mental deadlifts in one trading session, he laughs. By day's end, my discipline muscle is exhausted in the best way. Try this annoyance conversion exercise today. Grab a notebook and create 3 columns: irritation, muscle-trained, rep goal. When a frustration arises, a delayed flight, a passive-aggressive email, log it under irritation. Then identify the mental skill it could strengthen: patience, emotional regulation, creative problem-solving. Finally, set a rep target. Practice 3 measured breaths before responding to this email. One marketing executive turned her commute into a mindfulness gym by assigning specific challenges. Ignoring honking cars trained her focus, while merging lanes became an exercise in assertive decision-making. Within weeks, what once drained her became fuel for sharper instincts at work. The magic lies in progressive overload, the athletic principle of gradually increasing resistance to build strength. Start with minor annoyances. The neighbor's barking dog becomes your distraction resistance drill. As your tolerance grows, level up to heavier weights. A critical client meeting morphs into a live case study in emotional agility. The Stoics didn't avoid discomfort, they curated it like a coach designing a regimen. Marcus Aurelius intentionally wore rough tunics in winter to harden his resolve. Modern equivalents exist. A programmer I know practices coding in noisy cafes to simulate high-pressure debugging sessions. If I can concentrate here, he says, meeting room chaos feels like silence. For systematic training, adopt the 5-stage annoyance alchemy protocol. 1. Spot the sparring partner, identify the irritation. 2. Name the drill. This is my patience interval training. 3. Set the timer, engage deliberately for a set duration. 4. Debrief the round, what mental muscles fired. 5. Hydrate, conscious recovery. Stretch, hydrate, reset. Social media conditioned us to pathologize inconvenience, framing every minor hassle as a personal affront. The Stoic gymnasium mindset rebels against this entitlement. When a barrister gets your order wrong, that's not poor service, it's a pop quiz in graciousness. When your Wi-Fi falters during a presentation, the universe isn't punishing you. It's offering a spontaneous drill in improvising under pressure. Like a blacksmith tempering steel through repeated strikes, each irritation, when met with intentionality, forges a mind less brittle and more resilient. What begins as a cognitive exercise soon becomes instinct. You'll catch yourself smirking during airport delays, not because you enjoy them, but because you recognize them as the ultimate focus dojo. Epictetus' wrestling gym wasn't a metaphor, it was a manual. The world isn't happening to you, it's training you. And once you step onto those mats with that awareness, every perceived opponent becomes your most valuable coach. Alexander the Great didn't conquer continents on rhetoric alone. He marched 30,000 soldiers across deserts in full armor, often covering 40 miles a day in scorching heat. His secret weapon wasn't just strategy, but a radical belief in the body as the mind's first instrument. The Stoics took this further, viewing physical endurance not as vanity, but as the forge where discipline is hammered into being. Epictetus, despite his crippled leg, drilled students in breath control and cold tolerance, insisting, "You are not flesh and bone, but will, and will needs a blade sharpened daily." Fast forward to today's biohacking labs, where neuroscientists confirm what the ancients intuited. Targeted movement doesn't just change your physique, it rewires focus at a cellular level. Modern movement diets mirror Stoic principles with startling precision. Take the Alexander drill, adapted from the conqueror's training regimen. 20 minutes of alternating sandbag carries simulating armor and breath holds mimicking battle tension. A Stanford study found this combination spikes brain-derived neurotrophic factor BDNF, the protein crucial for attention and learning, by 200% compared to standard cardio. The key lies in intentional suffering. When you grip a heavy load while regulating breath, you're not just building muscle, but rehearsing composure under stress. One tech CEO starts his mornings with this ritual, claiming it's the reason he can sit through 4-hour investor meetings without mental fog. But the Stoics warned against imbalance. A chiseled body with a dull mind is as useless as a sharp sword left to rust. Their solution, the symmetron principle, pairing every strength challenge with a mobility exercise. Picture Marcus Aurelius' daily routine: stone lifting at dawn followed by spear throwing precision under fatigue. Then philosophy scrolls read while hanging from a wooden beam. Active recovery meets study. Modern adaptations abound. A venture capitalist swaps his standing desk for hourly Stoic sprints. 5 minutes of kettlebell swings immediately followed by focused note-taking. The contrast is deliberate. The kettlebell's raw exertion primes his brain for nuanced analysis, just as blacksmith's alternate hammer strikes with careful shaping. For a practical template, try this 3-tiered movement diet. 1. Foundation feast: daily functional patterns our ancestors survived by. Farmers' walks with grocery bags, stair climbs instead of elevators, or even crawling sessions to reconnect primal neuromuscular pathways. A Berkeley study linked such incidental resistance to 23% better decision-making under stress. 2. Focus fasts: 2-3x weekly biohacked versions of ancient drills. Cold showers paired with memory recall: Roman soldiers bathed in icy streams before strategy sessions, or grip endurance workouts while reciting Stoic maxims. The discomfort heightened awareness creates a lock-in effect for mental tasks afterward. 3. Recovery, nourishment, continuous micro-movements most neglect. Jaw relaxation after intense focus. Ancient orators massaged their faces post-speeches. Diaphragmatic breathing during emails or eye-tracking exercises to combat screen fatigue. These aren't breaks from work, they're stealth focus boosters. The magic happens when physicality becomes purposeful. A surgeon I know practices suturing with weighted gloves to simulate emergency fatigue. A writer completes dead hangs between paragraphs to maintain postural alignment that prevents creative blocks. Like Epictetus turning his lameness into a lesson on resilience, they're not exercising for aesthetics, they're conditioning the vessel that carries their mission. Critics dismiss this as extreme, but the Stoics would argue modern sedentarism is the real extremism. We've divorced movement from meaning. When you realign physical training as cognitive sharpening, every squat becomes a meditation on overcoming resistance, every cold plunge a rehearsal for life's unexpected shocks. The body isn't a temple to be pampered, it's the first tool in your kit, the whetstone for your will. And in an era where most minds wander before their feet ever do, that's the ultimate edge. The activist pounds her fist on the table, listing every injustice in vivid detail, yet when asked what she's personally building to address them, the room falls silent. Meanwhile, across town, a quiet volunteer teaches literacy in a homeless shelter, not for social media clout, but because it's within his power to act. Both care deeply, but only one channels that care like a Stoic with a deliberate circle of influence audit. Stephen Covey's famed concept gets a Stoic upgrade when we shift from reactive outrage to prosocial agency, measuring our energy not by how much we criticize, but by how much we construct. Ancient Stoics divided the world into three concentric circles: what we control our actions, what we influence local networks, and what we merely observe global systems. Modern slacktivism inverts this. We exhaust ourselves raging against distant bureaucracies while neglecting neighbors we could actually help, the Stoic corrective. A weekly influence audit. Grab a sheet of paper and draw 3 rings. Inner ring. List actions you directly control, volunteer shifts, mentoring calls, skill sharing. Middle ring. Note local leverage points, community boards, workplace initiatives. Outer ring. Acknowledge systemic issues you care about but can't single-handedly fix: climate policy, inequality. Now here's the pivot transfer: 20% of the energy you currently spend on outer ring outrage into inner ring action. Consider Maria, a teacher frustrated by education inequity. Her pre-audit days were spent doom-scrolling policy failures and signing online petitions. After mapping her circles, she realized tutoring just one struggling student each week did more tangible good than 1,000 retweets. 6 months later, her inner ring had expanded. She'd trained 5 peers to tutor, creating a micro-program that doubled her school's literacy intervention capacity. This is the prosocial focus Epictetus championed. Don't explain philosophy, embody it. The Community Impact Tracker makes this visceral. Create a simple spreadsheet with columns for date, action type, direct service, /skills, /advocacy, and ripple score, estimated lives touched. A software developer tracked how writing free coding tutorials for underprivileged teens, skills, had a higher ripple score than political debates, advocacy. Within a year, his tutorials had helped 50 students land tech jobs, a measurable inner ring impact no Twitter thread could match. Critics argue this approach lets systems off the hook, but the Stoics would counter. Dysfunctional structures persist precisely because too many outsource change to abstract them. When Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one," he wasn't dismissing systemic reform, he was insisting it starts with personal sovereignty. The parent reading nightly to her child builds literacy as surely as any curriculum overhaul, just on a scale she can actually govern. This habit shines during crises. When a flood devastated his town, Carpenter Jake bypassed the usual complaints about slow government response. His circle audit revealed 2 immediate levers: his construction skills and a church basement. Within days, he'd organized volunteer teams to rebuild homes, efforts that later inspired the very policy changes he'd previously only yelled about online. The lesson: outer rings often shift when enough people act in their inner rings with Stoic consistency. Your influence audit isn't about limits, it's about leverage. That energy drained by nightly news outrage could fund a monthly meal for a struggling family. The hour lost to political bickering might teach a refugee your professional skills. The circles aren't cages, they're lenses helping you spot where your hands actually fit on the gears of change. And when enough individuals focus where they can truly move needles, those small Stoic pushes add up to tectonic shifts no amount of complaining could ever achieve. Zeno of Citium, founder of Stoicism, once stood silent for an entire hour when asked a provocative question, not out of ignorance, but to demonstrate the power of unspoken thought. In an era where hot takes flood timelines and reactive comments escalate conflicts, the Stoic practice of linguistic discipline emerges as an antidote to conversational chaos. This isn't about withholding opinions, it's about treating words like precious currency, spending only what's necessary and never squandering mental reserves on trivial skirmishes. Consider the modern gossip trap: co-workers dissecting a manager's divorce over coffee, or Twitter threads dissecting celebrity scandals. The Stoics would see these not as harmless chatter, but as cognitive leaks draining focus from meaningful dialogue. Epictetus offered a surgical solution: the Socratic pause. Before speaking, ask 3 questions. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? A tech executive who adopted this filter reported declining 90% of urgent Slack debates by simply pasting those questions into the thread. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was revealing. Conversations either elevated or evaporated. Apply this to digital discourse with the Stoic scroll test. When tempted to engage with a contentious tweet, insert Marcus Aurelius's razor. Will this exchange improve my character or my mission? One journalist I know bookmarked inflammatory threads to review after 24 hours. 90% no longer seemed worth her keystrokes. The remaining 10, she addressed them with bullet point brevity, no emotional labor spent crafting perfect zingers. This mirrors Seneca's advice to write letters as if chiseling stone, where every word carries weight. For face-to-face interactions, practice voluntary muteness. Choose one meal daily where you speak only when meeting 2 criteria. Your words must either request essential information, what time is our meeting, or offer genuine value. Your presentation's data visualization could benefit from thinner grid lines. At first, the silence feels jarring until you notice how much mental bandwidth was previously consumed by automatic small talk. A trial at a Boston law firm found associates who adopted this during lunch breaks reported 40% greater afternoon focus with no perceived social cost. Linguistic discipline extends to self-talk. The Stoics distinguished between logos, reasoned speech, and fantasia, emotional noise. When facing setbacks, they'd narrate challenges in third person. Marcus is experiencing a setback instead of I'm failing. Modern sports psychology confirms this creates critical distance. NBA players using this technique showed 28% faster recovery from performance slumps. Try it during your next crisis. Describe the situation aloud as if advising a friend, stripping away the hysterical inner monologue, the ultimate test. The Epictetan email draft. Before sending any emotionally charged message, write it, then delete every adjective and adverb. What remains is pure signal. A venture capitalist who enforced this rule avoided 3 potential lawsuits in 1 quarter simply because, stripped of inflammatory language, the actual disputes amounted to minor contract clauses. Words are the knives of the mind, sharp enough to carve truth or wound unnecessarily. The Stoics sharpened theirs daily, then kept them sheathed until absolutely needed. When you master this, you'll find your silence speaks volumes, and your few words carry unprecedented gravity. Marcus Aurelius ruled the known world with an empire's treasury at his fingertips, yet his personal journal reveals a man more concerned with the integrity of his character than the weight of his coins. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, he wrote, but in having few wants. This radical indifference to affluence wasn't hypocritical austerity, it was strategic insulation against fortune's whims. Today's Stoic entrepreneurs channel this same principle through what psychologist Clay Routledge terms enoughism, the deliberate calibration of resources to mission requirements rather than cultural benchmarks. Consider the founder of Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard, who transferred ownership of his billion-dollar company to a trust fighting climate change. His philosophy mirrors Seneca's distinction between instrumental and terminal wealth, money that serves purpose versus money that becomes the purpose. Chouinard's infamous rusted-out pickup truck wasn't a poverty signal, it was a tangible manifestation of his company's mission statement: we're in business to save our home planet. Every dollar not spent on luxury cars became a dollar invested in recycled materials research. This is financial stoicism in action, not rejecting money, but rendering it neutral, like a hammer that builds either hospitals or gallows depending on the wielder's virtue. The virtue-based budgeting framework operationalizes this mindset across 3 tiers. 1. Mission fuel expenses directly enabling core objectives, e.g., a programmer investing in ergonomic chairs for marathon coding sessions. 2. Virtue maintenance costs preserving physical/mental operating capacity, nutritious food over status dining, functional wardrobe over fashion. 3. Indifference, everything else ruthlessly questioned. Does this free me to focus or chain me to maintain? Tech CEO Danielle Applestone famously applied this by capping her salary at 7 times her lowest paid employee's earnings, not for PR, but to prevent lifestyle inflation from distorting company priorities. Her enough number wasn't arbitrary, it was calculated to maintain what the Stoics called eudaimonia, flourishing untethered to external validation. When venture capitalists pressured her to scale faster, she cited Epictetus: wealth consists not in having great possessions but in having few needs. The company stabilized at 50 employees, intentionally foregoing hypergrowth to preserve culture and quality. Modern FIRE movements often miss Stoicism's nuance by fixating on escape rather than purpose. Compare 2 early retirees. One saves aggressively to quit work and binge Netflix, while another attains financial independence to volunteer full-time at a refugee center. Both may reach the same net worth, but the latter embodies Seneca's ideal, using money as a slave to virtue. A Silicon Valley engineer illustrated this by capping his passive income at $40,000 annually. Anything beyond gets reinvested into his robotics education nonprofit. Poverty fears made me hoard, he admitted, until I realized my anxiety wasn't about lacking money, but lacking meaningful outlets for it. The Stoic net worth statement flips traditional accounting on its head. Alongside assets and liabilities, it tracks freedom multipliers, investments that reduce future time, demands virtue liabilities, possessions requiring excessive maintenance/attention, sole dividends, capital allocated to ethical growth beyond yourself. One entrepreneur discovered his sprawling mansion consumed 30% of his mental bandwidth: property taxes, staff management. Constant upkeep, downsizing to a minimalist live workspace liberated that energy for product innovation. Like Cotto refusing luxurious furnishings even as Rome's wealthiest senator, he recognized that every dollar and minute spent on status upkeep was stolen from his true aims. Financial stoicism doesn't demand asceticism, it demands intentionality. When investor Naval Ravikant said, "The real luxury is being unbothered," he echoed Musonius Rufus' teaching that wealth tests character more than poverty. The ultimate metric isn't your bank balance, but how calmly you could lose it and proceed unchanged. That's the Stoic entrepreneur's edge. Money becomes wind in their sails, not the compass by which they steer. Imagine having a personal advisory board of history's most disciplined minds, each offering their unique approach to overcoming distractions. That's the power of the role model rotation, a deliberate practice of cycling through Stoic masters' focused strategies like a wisdom playlist. While most self-improvement advice treats ancient philosophers as a monolithic block, the truth is Seneca's razor-sharp time management differed radically from Clean's brute persistence or Musonius Rufus' radical simplicity. By immersing yourself in one Stoic's tactics each month, you're not just reading philosophy, you're conducting a live apprenticeship across centuries. Begin with Clean's persistence protocol. Before becoming Zeno's successor, this former boxer funded his studies by hauling water at night, a backbreaking labor he reframed as mental training. His signature strategy, the dichotomy drill, any task, no matter how tedious, became two challenges: completing the work itself and maintaining unwavering focus while doing it. Modernize this by pairing mundane chores with cognitive exercises. Need to fold laundry, simultaneously recite Stoic maxims from memory. Commuting, listen to philosophy lectures at double speed while noting key points. Clean's didn't just endure hardship, he weaponized it. Transition next to Musonius Rufus' simplicity sprint. While others debated abstract ethics, this farmer philosopher taught students to strip away all non-essentials, including excessive philosophizing. His infamous one-stool challenge forced pupils to live with just a wooden stool, a coarse cloak, and barley bread for weeks. Apply this digitally with a minimalist workbench. For 1 week, restrict your workspace to only 3 physical tools, e.g., notebook, pen, water bottle, and 3 digital tabs. The constraint breeds creativity. One app developer used this method to code an entire prototype using only a basic text editor, later admitting, "Without my usual 50 Chrome tabs, I noticed flawed logic in my architecture immediately." The Stoic Hall of Fame reading list turns theory into timed trials. Each month's text comes with an accompanying challenge. 1. Epictetus Discourses Right Arrow Control Audit. For 30 days, journal every instance where you confused controllables with uncontrollables, e.g., fretting over a flight delay instead of preparing alternative plans. 2. Seneca's Letters Right Arrow Deathbed Edit. Before sending any email or message, ask, "Would I regret sending this if it were my final communication?" 3. Marcus Aurelius Meditations Right Arrow Cosmic Zoom. When stressed, sketch a quick view from above, doodle, stick figures representing your worry against a vast cosmic backdrop. A Wall Street trader credits this rotation with curing his burnout. Studying Clean's taught him to reframe repetitive market analysis as mental conditioning. Musonius Rufus' month revealed 70% of his essential research tools were clutter. By the time he reached Seneca, he'd cut his workday by 3 hours while improving trade accuracy. The genius of this habit lies in its antidote to guru worship. No single Stoic had all the answers. Their power emerges when hybridized. Picture combining Epictetus' radical acceptance with Seneca's proactive time blocking, or fusing Zeno's logical precision with Cato's unbreakable will. Like a chef mastering techniques from diverse culinary traditions, you become fluent in focused dialects. Start small. Assign next month to one philosopher. When their strategies click, you won't just understand Stoicism, you'll have lived it. Near the end of his life, Marcus Aurelius lay on a battlefield cot racked with fever, dictating final letters to his generals, not about military strategy, but about how to raise virtuous children. Even as his empire stretched across continents, his dying thoughts centered on legacy over conquest. This is the ultimate test of the Stoic lens, zooming out from daily tasks to ask, what will my focused life have stood for? The ancients called this an ethical will, not a list of assets to distribute, but a distillation of hard-won wisdom to pass on. Unlike modern bucket lists fixated on experiences to consume before dying, the Stoic version flips the script. What seeds are you planting that will outlast your seasons? Consider two entrepreneurs racing toward the same financial target. One obsesses over exit strategies and net worth figures. The other keeps a parchment on her desk titled "Letters to My Future Heirs," where she journals lessons from each failure, not just business tactics, but how to maintain integrity when investors push for shortcuts. Both may hit their monetary goals, but only the latter engages in what psychologist Erik Erikson termed generativity, the urge to nurture guidance that echoes beyond one's lifespan. When Seneca wrote, "We should hunt out the helpful pieces of teaching from the great harvest of letters," he wasn't talking about collecting quotes. He was urging us to become the authors of wisdom worth harvesting. Crafting your ethical will begins with a simple but jarring exercise. Write your own eulogy as you fear it might read if you continue your current path. A tech CEO who did this realized his hypothetical eulogy, praised his coding brilliance but lamented his emotional absence. That epiphany reshaped his priorities. He began blocking family hours in his calendar with the same rigor as product launches. The Stoics didn't wait for deathbeds to confront these truths. They wore coarse tunics to remind themselves, you could leave life right now. Mortality isn't morbid, it's the whetstone that sharpens purpose. Now go deeper with the 3-generation impact draft. Fold a paper into columns labeled past, present, and future. Under past, list values inherited from ancestors, perhaps your grandmother's resilience during wartime. Present holds current actions. Are they reinforcing or betraying those values? Future projects how your choices might ripple forward. A teacher who completed this saw her grading rubrics weren't just assessing students. They were shaping how future parents would value education. Legacy isn't some distant abstraction, it's the sum of today's micro-choices. For a tactile prompt, try the coin ceremony. Keep a coin in your pocket engraved with Memento Mori, remember you must die. Each time your hand brushes it, ask, is what I'm doing now worthy of being someone else's ancestral wisdom? A surgeon carries his during operations, using the weight to recenter when fatigue threatens his precision. It's not about death, he explains. It's about ensuring my hands honor those who taught me and those I'll never meet who'll benefit from my steadiness today. The final test, the empty chair dialogue. Place a chair opposite you and imagine your great-grandchild sitting there. What would you need to tell them to feel at peace with how you spent your time? Not grand achievements, but quiet truths, how you recovered from betrayal, why you chose integrity over easy wins, what love cost you and gave back. When a founder practiced this weekly, he scrapped his planned IPO to build a smaller, employee-owned firm. My imaginary granddaughter asked why I'd trade lifetime relationships for transient wealth. He admitted, I had no good answer. Legacy isn't built in life's final chapter, it's encoded in every focused hour. The Stoics knew what modern psychology confirms. We're more likely to procrastinate on tasks framed as for yourself than those framed as for those who'll come after. Your ethical will isn't a document to leave behind, it's a compass to live by now. When your work aligns with the echoes you wish to leave, distraction loses its grip. The empire will fade, the inbox will overflow, but what you engrave upon others' character, that's the only currency that outlasts time. We've journeyed through 25 Stoic habits, not as abstract philosophy, but as a battle-tested toolkit for unwavering focus in a fractured world. From morning reflections to mortality reminders, from voluntary hardship to legacy crafting, each practice serves as an anchor, pulling you back to your mission when the tides of distraction rise. Picture the modern mind buffeted by notifications, enslaved by algorithms, addicted to the dopamine drip of likes and clicks. Now contrast it with the Stoic path, a mind trained like a laser, undistracted by trivialities, undeterred by setbacks, unwavering in its commitment to what truly matters. The difference isn't just productivity, it's sovereignty over your own attention, the rarest currency in our age of noise. This isn't about perfection. Even Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, confessed in his private journal to moments of weakness and distraction. The power lies in the daily return, the relentless realignment. Think of these habits as a forge where discipline is hammered into being, one intentional choice at a time. You don't need to master all 25 at once. In fact, trying to do so would violate the very Stoic principle of focused incremental progress. Instead, adopt this challenge. Choose one habit from today's list, just one, and commit to it for the next 30 days. Perhaps it's the pre-dawn journaling ritual where you anticipate obstacles before they hijack your focus. Maybe it's the dichotomy of control, training your brain to distinguish between what's worth your energy and what isn't. Or it could be as simple as the Stoic pause, those 3 breaths between stimulus and response that reclaim agency over your reactions. Whatever you choose, track your progress not in days completed, but in moments reclaimed, the hour you didn't waste scrolling, the difficult conversation you navigated with clarity, the project you advanced because you refused to let trivial disruptions steer you off course. When those 30 days end, I want to hear your breakthroughs. Drop a comment below sharing which habit you chose and how it reshaped your focus. Did morning reflections help you sidestep a crisis? Did negative visualization make you cherish creative work more deeply? Your story might be the spark someone else needs to start their own Stoic journey. And this is just the beginning. If you've ever struggled with self-doubt or hesitation, wondering if you truly have what it takes, stay tuned for our next deep dive, Stoic Rituals for Unshakable Confidence. You'll discover how the same philosophers who mastered focus also cultivated a courage so unyielding, it withstood empires and gladiator pits. But for now, pick your one habit. Start small, start today. The path to unwavering focus isn't found in grand gestures, but in the daily decision to show up undistracted, undivided, and relentlessly aligned with what matters most. The Stoics didn't just ponder these principles, they lived them, and now so can you.